We're going to now have a conversation between our very own Cecilia Jamasmie, who's a top reporter for mining.com and the Northern Miner. She's going to be speaking with Jody Kuzenko, who is president and CEO of Torex Gold Resources. I know we've had some audience members clamoring for Jody to come on. So we're here. We're at that point in the day. And then immediately after Cecilia speaks with Jody, we will have the premier of Yukon, Sandy Silver, speaking with the editor-in-chief of the Northern Miner, Alicia Hyatt. So make sure you stay tuned for that. Okay, so on to this one entitled How to Navigate Mexico's New Mining Environment, Gold's Relevancy and Potential M&AS. Now, let me introduce Cecilia, and Cecilia, you can then introduce Jody. Cecilia has covered all aspects of mining over the last 15 years. She's particularly interested in issues around ESG in Latin America. She's been interviewed by BBC News and CBC and has been a guest speaker at mining conventions, including Mine Expo and the World's Copper Conference. She's also a member of the expert panel on social license to operate at the European Project for Mining and Metallurgical Regions for the EU. She holds a Master's of Journalism from the University of British Columbia and is now based in Nova Scotia. Wonderful to see you, Cecilia, and I'll turn things over to you for an introduction of Jody. Oh, we can't hear you, Cecilia. I believe you're on mute. Did we lose Cecilia altogether?
It looks like we have right now, but hopefully she will join in a second. Do you want to read Jody's bio? I can send it over to you.
Yeah, I don't have it. I'm sorry, Jody. This was Cecilia's thing. But yes, if you want to say, or how about all the better, Laura? Let's save one step of mediation. If you have it there, you have a lovely voice. Why don't you read Jody's bio while we get Cecilia back on?
Sounds good. I just hope I can pronounce everything the way that you do with the mining terminology, but let me just pull it up for you. Okay, so Jody was appointed President and Chief Executive Officer of Torex Gold in June 2020, having previously held the position of Chief Operating Officer since joining the company in October 2018. She is a senior mining executive with over 20 years of operational and business experience, mainly acquired at Vale, formerly Inco. After the first 4 years at Inco as Chief Legal Officer, Jody moved to the operational side of the business, where she held roles of increasing responsibility in operational side of the business, where she held roles of increasing responsibility in operations management. She has a proven record of execution and leadership in many areas of mining operations, including refining strategy, safety, health and environment, energy and utilities, and community, labor, and government relations. Jody holds a Bachelor of Laws from the University of Western Ontario, an Honors Bachelor of Arts from McMaster University, and has completed the ICD Rotman Director's Education Program. She is a founding advisory board member of the Center of Research in Occupational Safety and Health at Laurentian University, and serves as a director of Torex Gold and the World Gold Council. Previous board experience includes the Greater Sudbury Chamber of Commerce, Association of Major Power Consumers of Ontario, and Natural Gas Users Association in Canada. In 2020, she was named one of the top 100 global inspirational women in mining by Women in Mining UK, as well as one of the 2020 names to know by CIM magazine. So now welcome, Jody.
Welcome, Jody. I think Cecilia has managed to rejoin. Cecilia, are you with us and can we hear you?
I am back. I'm so sorry, Murphy's Law. There was a power out, so I have to quickly run down, and I'm in a different location right now. I cannot start my video for some reason. Oh yeah, there I am.
There we go.
Hello, Jody. Sorry, and thank you for joining us today. I think Laura introduced you already. So that's a good thing. Not much time was lost.
And Anthony noted that people were clamoring for my talk, so I'm extra delighted to be here and get going.
Very true. I saw all the comments they are asking about you, so here you are. And very recently, your company posted the first quarter results of the year, which were very positive, but also a little bit of a cost increase there, sustaining costs. So based on the announcement, and in broad strokes, we don't need to go to the nitty-gritty, but what's in store for Torex and your Morelos project, let's say through the year and in 5 years?
Yeah, so it's such an exciting time to be at Torex. Cecilia, I'm absolutely delighted to be here. There's so many things going on and so much to talk about, both in terms of 2022 and what the midterm looks like for Torex. I do want to step back and give the listeners a bit of an overview of the company, because sometimes I dial into these things and I'm not even sure where the operations are or what the structure of the company looks like. And so I will say Torex is a mid-tier gold producer. Our market cap's just north of $1 billion. We're headquartered in Toronto, Canada, which is where I am today. Our operations are in a place called Guerrero, Mexico, in southwest Mexico. So if you think about it as being equidistant from Mexico City and the lovely Acapulco, we're right there in a very, very remote location in the Guerrero Gold Belt in the Sierra Madre Mountains. The company is fairly young. It was formed about a decade ago. We went into commercial production in just 2016. And since then, we've become the second largest gold producer in all of Mexico. So we have about 1,000 employees, another 2,000 contractors, 11 communities right around us. And I would say we're known for a couple of things. One is reliable and consistent production. Cecilia, you talked about our first quarter results. And if I could describe those, they would be as expected. We say what we're going to do, and then we deliver on what we're going to do, and then we say what we're going to do next. And so that's been our mantra. We've delivered on guidance 3 years in a row. Last year, the site team absolutely crushed it. They produced 468,000 ounces, which was at the very top end of our guided range. We hit total cash costs and AISC guidance as well. And just in terms of the overview, it wouldn't be complete without me mentioning what I'm personally most proud of. It's the fact that we've done it safely. As at right now, those 1,000 employees and 2,000 contractors that I talked about, we just crossed the threshold of a year operating without a lost time injury in Mexico. So coming up on 9 million hours lost time injury free. And I'm not one of these CEOs who parades that lagging metric around and thinks that we've got it all figured out on safety, but we do combine that with really robust reporting protocols and really robust systems and a safety culture that I would say is second to none. So that's a little bit about the company. In terms of the outlook for 2022, I'm looking for a repeat performance of 2021. Just do what you did last year, guys. What could be easier than that, right? So bring me to the top end of guidance on production, deliver on total cash costs and AISC, and most of all, continue to do that safely. And we want to do that out of our assets. They're called the El Limón Guajes assets. Those are north of the Balsas River. We have 2 open pits, underground mines, and a fully integrated processing facility. And then the longer term look for Torex is all about growth. We recently announced our technical report for our Media Luna project that is south of the Balsas River. So we've got organic growth in the pipeline. And then on the heels of that, as we have our flagship operation firmly established for the long term out to past 2030, or today into 2033, we will look over to the horizon at M&A. And so I think we have an excellent foundation established operationally, safety, production, and costs. We have the near-term plan for organic growth, and that segues into inorganic growth for Torex in the midterm future.
Let's explore a bit more about this medium growth plan. You're a single asset company and many see that as a potential risk. So are you open, looks like you are, to M&As, and in what regions?
Yeah, we're open to M&A. We've been quite clear about that. There were a couple of things we wanted to do first, particularly as I stepped into role as CEO. I wanted to ensure that our ELG operations on the north side of the river were positioned for success, and we were doing everything we could to extend those operations. Today, our open pit sunsets at the end of 2024, and I'm looking for even more. So we have a nice, smooth transition between the open pit operations on the north side of the river to our Media Luna project on the south side of the river. Then, as I said, we wanted to get Media Luna online. So I had a good source of cash flow for at least out till 2033. Now is the time to be looking at M&A. So now is the time to look at other assets that we could responsibly bolt onto that are value accretive, that will create value for our shareholders and support us in diversifying away from the single asset risk that we think is an overhang on our stock. And so the important part, I think, is that we're in no rush. We don't need to get backed into an M&A transaction. We can be patient, we can be prudent, we can be opportunistic, and we can be selective. And we will be all of those things to make sure we find the right deal at the right time that's value accretive for our investors.
Do you have any preference in terms of region? Say Mexico, other countries?
Yeah, when I look at M&A, Cecilia, I mean, there's a couple of ways of looking at it. I look at it very much through an operator's lens, not a banker's lens first. And so as I think about acquiring a company, I need to be able to close my eyes and imagine running that company. I need to understand clearly the value that Torex and the Torex team brings to that acquisition. I need to understand clearly what the synergies are. And I'm looking to create not just a bigger company for the sake of being bigger, but a bigger, better, stronger company. So when I think about jurisdictionally, I think about that north-south corridor, Canada, the United States. I'm certainly open to Mexico, staying in Mexico. Not every jurisdiction in Mexico is the same, or potentially even other, what I would consider to be lower risk jurisdictions in Latin America. If you get too far afield, then you're starting to be into time zones. It's difficult to imagine synergies. We have a very small, lean team. So I'm really focused on that north-south corridor. And I would say, one of the things that's of interest to me is because our new project, Media Luna, is part gold, part copper. We become a significant copper producer as we bring Media Luna online. 45 million pounds of copper a year, about 30% of the value of that deposit sits in copper. So that opens up prospects for us for either a gold copper producer or a copper producer geographically in a region that's of interest to us, in a way where the combined value of the company and the combined operation of the company is synergistic and value accretive for our shareholders.
And speaking of Mexico, what's like doing business in Mexico? And the reason I'm asking this is because Mexico has been a lot on the news in the past couple of months. First of all, they have a freeze on new mining concessions in place. And it recently passed a new law that effectively nationalizes lithium, which thankfully is not a business you are in right now. But many people fear that President López Obrador's policy will continue to favor state-owned companies in detriment of private companies. So do you think this may touch the precious metal sector? No, yes, why?
Yeah, I mean, the AMLO administration has brought with it some interesting philosophies. And I would say operating in Mexico, interesting is probably a good word to describe it. And like any jurisdiction, Cecilia, there are some good things about it and there are some challenges that come with it. And I don't think really there's any mining jurisdiction in the world that doesn't have both of those things. And so when I think about the good things of operating in Mexico, I think about number one, the abundance of natural resources. The Guerrero Gold Belt, where we're operating, the geology of that asset continues to give and give and give, and it never ceases to surprise me in a good way. And the other thing I think about in terms of the good part of operating in Mexico is the people. I mean, our 1,000 employees and 2,000 contractors, 99% of them are from Mexico. It's not expats running the organization. So we have a culture there of people who are hardworking and committed and dedicated and want to learn. And so skilled labor force, great culture, good rocks. Those are things that I think are really the ingredients to a healthy mining company. Now, in terms of the challenges, you've pointed out one. I would say the current administration hasn't delivered certainty and predictability and consultation with the mining industry as much as I would like. And one of the things I often say, Cecilia, is uncertainty is the enemy of investment. Every time I get up in front of the government in Mexico, and I encourage them to bring certainty in tax policy, economic policy, security policy, this granting of concessions. And so I think the more that that can be done, the more investment will be encouraged in the country. And then the only other thing I would say is on the receiving end of that, there needs to be a distinction made between that which is a bit of bluster and that which is actually true, which will impact the industry. And so this idea of nationalizing lithium, well, the Mexican government always had perfectly within their prerogative to either grant concessions or not grant concessions. And so if they didn't want to grant lithium concessions, then they wouldn't do that. And so it's sort of a different way of talking about a prerogative and a power that they have already had. So sophisticated operators like we are, sophisticated investors like many of our investors are able to make the distinction between what's real and what could actually impact the industry and what's a bit of bluster. And like any jurisdiction, got to trade off the good with the challenging, I think.
That's definitely true. Speaking a bit of challenges now, in the past 10 to 15 years, myself, I've seen the mining industry changing quite a bit, from being an old boys club to a more diverse young sector. And it's interesting to observe the change of attitudes, the change of ideologies, and of course, the rising women in the area, even though female CEOs as yourself are very few, still a minority. Would you say, as a woman, or generally speaking, women bring a different leadership style to the sector? And how would you describe your kind of style as a leader?
Yeah, I do, Cecilia, I do agree with you wholeheartedly that the mining industry has changed over the last 2 decades. It used to be, I think, a much more internally focused industry. So you do your exploration, you find your geology, you wrap a mine design around that, you build your mine, you drill, you blast, you muck, you process, you put your product to market, you collect your money, and that's the end of it. I'm oversimplifying there, but I think that was sort of the tenor and tone of the industry 2 decades ago. Today, I would say our industry necessarily has to be focused on externalities, right? On how companies are dealing with permitting, how companies are dealing with political influences, municipally, statewide, federally, how companies are dealing with obtaining permission from local communities, with unions. Labor force is different than it was 20 years ago. Employees want different things from the employee experience. So how to attract them, how to retain them, how to engage them, how to get people working together. I think those sorts of considerations certainly are different today than they were 20 years ago. And I do think that calls for a different style of leadership. And if I had to describe it, I would describe the old style of leadership as autocratic, command and control. All of the decisions float to the top of the organization where this person makes the choices. You have all of the authority, but not necessarily all of the information. You can only see what you can see. And I do think that the leadership of today needs to be collaborative and trust and inspired focused leadership so that employees are aware of the purpose of the organization, what you're there to do beyond make money. They're aware of how they contribute to that, and then they come to work and willingly give the best they've got. And your question about, do women bring that more than men? I really don't know that. What I will say is that women and men tend to lead differently. So do different age groups. The older set tends to lead differently than the younger set. So do different academic backgrounds. Mining engineers may lead differently than accountants or lawyers. And so I wouldn't ascribe it only to gender, but I do agree wholeheartedly that a different leadership style is required to be successful in this day and age in the mining industry. Because as an organization, you're only as strong as your weakest link. And it doesn't matter what stops you up. If it's an internal issue or an externality, you still can't move forward. And so it's very important that those complexities are understood and addressed by the leaders in the company.
Jody, I know we are running out of time, but I cannot take advantage of the 2 minutes we have left to please ask you, how do you see what's happening right now in the mining industry? Everyone is talking about critical minerals and battery minerals, and that's the buzzword. And who is cheering for gold? What's the relevance of gold in the current environment, and why is it still relevant? Too long to answer, but do your best.
Yeah, I'll do my best in a couple of minutes to wrap up. Gold is still relevant in my view. I sit around the boardroom table at the World Gold Council and talk about how relevant it is. It's been around for hundreds of years as a store of value to deal with difficult times that economies are having globally. So it's long been treated that way because it runs counter-cyclically to the other things that are happening in the macroeconomy. So number one, do I think it still has a place in the investment space? Certainly, over the coming years. And I'd also say that oftentimes gold deposits come with things like copper, as is the case with Media Luna. Copper, an absolutely critical mineral to help us with the energy transition we need to make over the coming decades. Won't be able to do it without copper, so I think that's critical. I will say two more things. One, I think the gold industry has work to do. I think that investors of today are requiring that they know the provenance of gold. Is it mined sustainably? Is it mined responsibly? Can we track and trace it back to the mine? And is it mined at a company like Torex mines in a way that we can be proud of? So I think there's more work to be done on provenance. And I do think there's work to be done on accessibility of investment for the gold mining industry. I look at my own young adult children. My oldest is 21. She invests in Bitcoin. Why? Because she can get it on her phone. Why is there not that accessibility for investment in the gold mining industry? So I think there's work to do there. And the last thing I would say about the relevance of gold mining industry, and this is a bit of a reflective comment on Torex. I know for sure, Cecilia, that the presence of our company in Guerrero, Mexico has changed the lives of 1,000 people and a couple of thousand more in communities and a few thousand more in contractors for the better. And I'm not talking about change for the year, I'm talking about generational change. So children will have the opportunity to grow up, have good jobs, have options beyond those which were available to them before Torex was there. And so I think that kind of socioeconomic development in places in the world that would not otherwise see any of that in and of itself makes gold relevant. Helps people where it needs to be helped.
That's right. Well, thank you so much for your presence today. I know how much people were waiting for you, and you have delivered a fantastic answer in such a short time. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Cecilia. And thanks, Anthony, for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for taking the time. I can see why they were clamoring. Fantastic conversation, both of you.
All right.
Cheers, Jody. Have a great
Have an excellent day. It looks like you have a great agenda.
Thanks so much. Thanks so
All right.
much.
Bye-bye now.